Ready, Noah?
Yeah.
I
always take the high road.
Alright. My name is Kipp Luster. I was born in Washington, D.C. I'm biracial. My dad is black. My mom is white. My mom graduated from Georgetown University in 1988, and she met my dad while he was living up there, and he was running a car dealership. And my dad kind of manipulated my mom, like portrayed to be a certain person that he's not. And he ended up getting my mom pregnant 6 months after she graduated. And she ended up dying in 1990 when I was 1 year old. It's a mysterious, it's a mystery, how she died. And supposedly she hung herself while I was sitting on the bed, and my dad and cousin was out in the pool, right? When my mom died, my mom's side of my family didn't do a deep investigation to really find out what happened. My dad was in special ops, and my mom was trying to run away from my dad. And she ran away from my dad when I was 6 months old. And she lived with my mom's sister, her favorite sister, which is my Aunt Susie. My mom ended up calling my dad and giving my dad my mom's sister, which is my aunt, phone number. So my dad had contact with her, and he manipulated her to come back and live with her. So she took me, and he convinced my mom to move to Arlington, Virginia with her. That's where she supposedly committed suicide. However, I don't think that's the truth. My dad was wanted for a rape charge. And back then they didn't have Google and all that type of stuff to do research to figure out who this person really is when you meet a person. And he told my mom he played in the NFL. He told her a lot of lies. And I had an uncle, right, on my dad's side. He would call my uncle Carl, he's a crackhead. He would call her, and my dad would pay him to say certain things. He'd call her in front of her, you taking care of our farmland in Florida. So he portrayed like my black side of my family was very wealthy, right? And my uncle, he was a drug dealer, and he had a car lot, and he was making private, hidden compartments in cars, and he was renting it out to the drug dealers in D.C. and Maryland. That was his business. He had 18-wheelers as well. And my other uncle drove 18-wheelers for my uncle that was selling drugs. So my uncle, I'm going to fast forward and go back so you can kind of follow the story. My Uncle Charles, which is my dad's brother, he told me the true story, how my mom met my dad, right? And when I asked my dad when I was 10 years old, how'd you meet my mom? He told me he was at the beach in Virginia Beach. He met her at the beach. She was partying at the beach, and come to find out that wasn't a true story. She was a bartender while she was going to Georgetown. And when she was 23, she filled out an application to become a DEA agent. And they do a thorough background search, right? And my mom found out that my dad had prior charges, a convicted felon, his brother, a convicted felon for drugs. And now that's when she tried to run away from my dad because he wasn't really who he portrayed to be to her. So now when she died, I relocated with my great aunt. My dad went to the funeral. He only went to the hotel to talk to my mom's family. And he told them, look, if you want to have contact with Kipp, you got to buy this house, all this type of stuff, trying to basically bribe them to have contact with me. He left there. He had my cousin with him. And my aunt told me they tried to talk to my cousin Terrell to ask what happened the day that my mom passed away. My dad pulled him away and didn't allow him to talk to them. So they tried to get custody of me. My dad took me to Fort Walton Beach, Florida, which is in the panhandle of Northwest Florida, and dropped me off with my great aunt. She's 60 years old, and poverty neighborhood, drug infested. She was an alcoholic, gambler. She wasn't stable enough to take care of me, and her husband ended up having a stroke. He's a legitimate guy. They were law-abiding citizens, but They were very poor in a drug-infested neighborhood, right? They didn't have any business trying to raise a 1-year-old, and they were 60 years old. My uncle, he was in the military for 20 years. He was a Air Force jet mechanic, and he had a stroke when he was 10. So it was like, it got to a point to where I had to become a man the best way I could, because I had to help take care of him with my great aunt. And there was times, right, I was in 8th grade, about to go to 9th grade, and we were going to J.C. Penney's. She would get checks sent from my godparents on my mom's side, which are wealthy, and they would send money to take care of me. But how my mom's side of the family found me, they hired a private investigator to find me when I was 2. And my great aunt filed for a Social Security card, and that's how the private investigator said, oh, he's down there. They just filed for a Social Security card to get a check because my mom passed away. My aunt Susie came down there, flew to Florida to figure out like what's going on, what's the deal with me. They wanted to take me, and they offered $10,000. So my aunt Susie, she made the offer to my great aunt, which is Mary. My aunt Mary said no. So my aunt Mary talked to my dad. My dad turned himself into prison after he dropped me off with my great aunt. He used me as a financial pawn while he's doing his bid to get his aunt, which is my great aunt, to send percentages of the money that they get from me. And it got to a point to where I wanted to go with my mom's side of my family, but they wouldn't allow me. My dad was telling me all the time, I'm gonna get out of prison, I'm gonna get out of prison. And I remember when I was like 8 or 9, I wanted to stop going to visit them because how they touch you, I didn't like it. Like they touch you like a kid, like I'm young and they're searching me to go into the prison. So I stopped going to see them. And I started asking a lot of questions. I was very curious. My aunt, she used to get drunk on Canadian Mist and like used to wake me up out in my sleep when I was in like 4th or 5th grade. Like those white people, they didn't want you. They was want to put you up for adoption, telling me all these stories. And there was a picture of my mom like in my great aunt's house. And I used to sit in the living room and just stare at it and like wonder how my life would have been if I was raised with my mom or my mom's side of the family. So then eventually my great aunt allowed me to go visit. And I went to visit. I went to Chicago, and then I went from Chicago to Watertown, Connecticut, my other aunt. And the way they treated me with love and affection, it was just like night and day, right? So the second time I went to visit, remind you, my great aunt brainwashed me with all this stuff, like they didn't want me, they was gonna abandon me, and that my mom's family just disconnected away from my mom because she had a baby by a black man. So now when I'm 14, I'm playing basketball for my high school, Chata. I love sports. And I went to visit. My aunt, she adopted a black kid. So I'm like, what's going on here? Someone's manipulating and lying to me. So I asked my aunt Susie, I said, look, can I come live with you? I want to live with you. She said, if your great aunt says yes, you can come live with me. So I called my great aunt. I'm on the phone with her. I said, I want to live up here in Chicago with my aunt Susie because I seen a brighter future. I seen like I could be successful if I live here and I could stay out of trouble. I was already selling crack then. And she said no. And she said, you better not ask me that question again. When you come back to Florida, you're never going back to visit. So right after that, right, I went and met with my godparents at their bakery. They own a restaurant in Chicago, one of the biggest Italian restaurants, Costa Nostra. And I'm sitting with my godfather, Mike Florio. I'm sitting there. He asked me, are you enjoying the money I'm sending you? I'm like, what money? He was like, I send you a check for your birthday and Christmas. $2,000 for Christmas, $1,000 for your birthday. My great aunt, but it's in her name, first name, then in my name. She would turn over the check. I'm not knowing what I'm signing, and she would sign it. And her nickname in my neighborhood was the Lotto Lady, because she gambled so much. She would go out to all the neighbors and borrow money. And my great uncle, he gets disability, like 100% disability check. So she's getting my check, $1,700, and she's getting my uncle's check, which is like $3 grand. She's just gambling, spending it, right? So when I'm in 9th grade, we went to JCPenney. She swiped her card. It's declined. So I got to wear all my old shoes, old clothes that I wore during the summertime that busted, tore up to school. So I'm like, man, forget this. I'm going to the trap. I went full-fledged. But I first started selling crack when I was 12, just to have some money for myself. I shot out the street lights, and I knew how the D-boys moved on the block. So the clientele will drive through, and they'll say what they want. They'll tell them to spin the block and come back to get it ready. So I shoot out the light, and I take some sheetrock, sell it, make $200 or $300 just for the weekend. Me and my homeboys go to the mall and hang out. But after that point in my life, when she told me that I couldn't go live with my mom's side of the family, I was just so discouraged. I just gave up on sports. I was all in, selling drugs. And I went to juvenile detention center when I was like 14, 15. I was in and out of there. But I got to the point, I had like 3 cell charges when I was 16 from running to cars. They had me on camera. So I changed up the way I hustled. So I found one good clientele that I trust, and I told them, every new clientele you bring me, I give you a free gram. And I just built up my clientele so fast. And it took me to the next level. Like, I just became good at selling drugs. And it became a bad habit that I adopted at a young age. But I was in survival mode trying to provide for myself. And it got to the point when I was like 18, I was in a juvenile facility. Turned 18 in a juvenile facility. I wanted to change, but I didn't have that father figure, you know what I mean? The streets became my father. Basically, that's what it was. Everything that I seen in my neighborhood, that's where I picked up those habits from. Okay, these guys, they selling drugs. They got the cars, they got the money, they got the girls. That became my role models, you know what I mean? And listening to rap songs like Dope Boys in the Trap, T.I., Jeezy, you know what I mean? And that was a lifestyle I was living at a young age. I was all in the streets. And when I was 18, I was in the juvenile program. I wanted to change, but they didn't offer any resources to bridge that gap. Like, they train you to become institutionalized at a young age. They put you in these juvenile facilities, and it makes you think, okay, doing time isn't hard. So now I'm like, the consequences is not that big. So I got out and did the same thing. It was like a hamster in a wheel. I'm out the wheel in the juvenile detention center, but when I got out the detention center, got right back in that wheel. So I had a 5-year run from 18 to 23. And I was selling drugs. By the time I was 20, my great aunt, I loved her to death. She did the best she could, but she had her own vices. You know what I mean? She couldn't help that she was poor. She couldn't help that she had addictions, gambling, and alcoholic. So now all that trauma, like, it was just building up on the inside of me because I was lied to, and they manipulated me my entire life. When I was 20, my great aunt died from emphysema. She smoked like a pack of cigarettes a day. She died holding my hand. That was my only connection to Fort Walton Beach, Florida. I didn't have any other family there. So they took my great aunt. My great uncle now, he didn't have anyone to take care of him. They took him to the nursing home. His family came and got him from Memphis. So I felt like just so alone. I'm selling drugs. I'm making a lot of money. I'm making like 40 to 50 grand sometimes in 2 days, right? And I wasn't happy. I was living in condominiums. I was living in Atlanta at the same time in a condo. And I started looking for happiness through materialistic things, trying to pacify the pain, and it wasn't working. And I couldn't never figure out, like, what's my destiny? Like, I know it's not just living in the streets selling drugs, you know what I mean? And I got addicted to pain pills. I got addicted to Lortabs. In the midst of me getting addicted to Lortabs in 2012, right? Jasmine, she's from Defuniak Springs. So I was supplying drugs. I'm not incriminating myself because I already signed federal thing. They can't bring any new charges. But I was selling drugs in the whole panhandle of Northwest Florida in 850. And where she's from is 45 minutes away from me. My uncle lived there, right? That was the only connection. I had a bond with my uncle because he kept it real with me. He seen me one day looking at all my mom's pictures, looking at her yearbook, Georgetown, and it was like trying to put a puzzle together, like trying to figure out like what really happened, right? And I met Jasmine at my uncle's house. So I'm at my uncle's house. My little cousin, he owes me like $2,000, and I'm sitting in the house, and my little cousin, he's working for me. My little cousin calls my uncle. He's like, "Is Kipp there? K.I. there?" That was my nickname. "K.I. there?" I told him, tell him no. And I had a new Camaro when it first came out, 4 Giottos before the rappers were rapping about it. And he pulls up, he doesn't see my rental car, so I knew he knew that I wasn't there. So he comes in, I see Jasmine, I'm like, man, who's this beautiful young girl, you know what I mean? But I was trying to figure out, like, how old is she? She 18. So he comes in the living room. I'm not even asking him about the money now. I'm asking, like, who's the girl you with? And you know how, like, when you see a certain person with a girl, you looking like, that ain't her caliber of guy, you know what I mean? I'm not trying to downplay my cousin, but I'm looking like, man, what is he doing with her? So now I'm drilling him with questions. And he's like, nah, it ain't my girl. So now I'm trying to figure out, like, how can I shoot at her and get her? But my girl is in the trailer with me, right? So what I do is, as my cousin's walking out, I'm like, hey, cuz, what's up with that money you owe me? And now I walk out, and my girl stays in the house. So I get in my car, and she's pulling out in her Nissan Sentra. I roll down my window. I ask her, what's her name? Can I get her number? Get to know her. She told me she got a boyfriend. She denied me. I sent her flowers. No, I paid my cousin to give me her number, and I found out where she worked. I sent her flowers and a necklace to her job. At the time I met Jasmine, I was addicted to Lortabs for Obama's whole first term for 4 years. After my great aunt died, I was just like went into like a depression, you know what I mean? And the Lortabs just kept my body like numb, like I didn't feel no emotions. And I was drinking lean. Then I got off. I ended up winging myself off of the Lortabs. I Googled how to get off of them. I took Suboxone, so I found Suboxone. I took the Suboxone for about a week. I got off of them. So now that I'm sober, I called my aunt that lives in Chicago, which was my mom's closest sister that she lived with when she ran from my dad. I asked her, do you have any of my mom's belongings? She said, yes. I knew one day you'll call for them. But at this time, I just got caught with a large amount of money, and I felt like I was about to go to the feds, and I wanted to figure out like what really happened with my mom. And my uncle, he told me a story right before I went to Chicago to see my aunt. He said, look, I was driving the 18-wheelers for your Uncle Dunn, my brother. He had the 18-wheeler company, he had the car lot, and I was supposed to go get a load in Virginia and come right back. Your dad convinced me to stop at his house, spend the night, go to the club, and be late with the load. So we went to the club. Before we went inside, we bumped a line of coke. He put it in the gas cap, and we went inside the club. Your mom was a gorgeous redhead working at the bar. He introduced himself, and he told a whole bunch of lies out the gate, and she fell for it, and he ended up getting her pregnant within 6 months. And your mom was trying to figure out, like, who he really was, and she couldn't. So my uncle tells me this story. So now I go get my mom's belongings from my Aunt Susie, and I see the application where she filled out the DEA application to become a DEA. She had to put down everybody she was closely related to or had a relationship with. She put my dad's brother, which was doing the drug stuff, and it came back, she was denied. And it told her everything that these people, their background. And that's when she ran away. My dad convinced her to come back, right? So now my uncle, our bond got much tighter since then because he kept it real with me. Everybody else on my black side, they kind of manipulated. I can't say all of them didn't know. My great aunt, she kind of didn't know because he brought me to her and told her all these stories. You know what I mean? Told her this manipulating lies. And from prison, he was still manipulating lying just to get money while he's in prison. So I went to see him in 2012 when he needed help for parole. While I was selling drugs, I was a club promoter. I did shows with Nicki Minaj, and at that time, I had a carpet cleaning business like Stanley Steamer. I had contracts with Best Western, Super 8s, and he needed somebody to vouch for him to try to get out on parole. But I wanted to question him in his eyes, right? Like, tell the truth, you know what I mean? I asked him the question again. How'd you meet my mom? You know what I mean? So now I'm putting two and two together, and he's continuing to lie. Like, he's believed all these lies for all these years. So I end up going back home, and I got a federal indictment. I get the federal indictment. I get sentenced to 6 years. I had a state case on top of my federal case consecutive. So I got sentenced to 20 years in the state of Texas and 6 years on the federal sentence, right? And when I was sentenced to the federal time, I thought about the time when I had a chance to change my life when I was in the juvenile system, right? But I knew this is a whole different ball game. You know what I mean? I got 6 years to change my life. And that was my main focus. How can I change my life? What is it that imbalanced in my life? And I started a workout routine, and I got to FCI Memphis. It was all gangbangers. Where I'm from, I wasn't forced to be in a gang. You know what I mean? I was a drug dealer. I had homies that was GDs, but I wasn't forced to get down. So when I got to Memphis, it's all these gangs. I was so overwhelmed. Like, when I got there, it was people from Florida, shot callers already waiting for me, posted up like you are right there. Like, hey, how many of y'all? It's supposed to be 3 of y'all from Florida, right? So I'm thinking, like, how do they know we're coming? So they had our numbers on the people that was working in the laundry. I already told them, look, you got some homies from Florida coming, so they're already waiting. So it was a homie from South Florida. He was like, bro, you need to have that paperwork in 2 or 3 weeks, or else. Well, I'm like, man, listen, I just got here. I produce whatever you want me to produce. And they told me, don't go to the chow hall. Like, this way, I didn't know nothing about prison politics. They told me don't go to the chow hall without somebody, like one of the homies, walking with me. And I go to the chow hall. I sat at a Mexican cartel table, and I almost started a race riot, right? So I walked in. I was so hungry, I didn't wait on my homie to walk me to the chow hall. I walked in. It's like, you know, like back in the day, Martin Luther King, where everything's segregated when you see all this stuff in school. When you walk in, it's all blacks over here, Mexicans over here, and whites over here. I paid attention to it, but I was so hungry, I just was focused on getting food and sitting down and eating. The line on the black side was super long. The line on the Mexican and white side was short. So I go to the right side, Mexican and white. I get the food. So I'm eating. I felt people looking at me. They knew I was new because I had on boots, right? And I look up. I see like all these Mexicans staring at me. But I just keep eating. Black guy from Chattanooga, Tennessee, he walks by. He sees the tension. I'm not paying attention to that, right? And he's like, hey, bro, what are you? So now he's questioning me. I'm like, okay. I'm like, what do you mean? And he says, what's your race? I said, I'm black and white. He's like, you need to get up from here. They had just had a race riot. So I'm like, man, I'm almost done. I'm going to finish my food, then I'll get up. So he was like, look up. I look up. It's the shot callers or cartels looking at me. The Serenios, the Paisas, the Lauzetas, a shot caller, and the Silanoia shot callers, they're looking at me, right? And he's like, bro, just get up and go over here and I'll tell you, I'll explain. So we went over there. It's the South table. Everybody is not gang affiliated and you're from the southern states. I sit down, the OGs start putting me on game. So now I'm like, oh man, this is a whole different environment that I gotta learn, you know what I mean? So they started telling me about all these gangs. It's overwhelming. I wanted to work out and I wanted to lift the weights. There was politics with the weights. They controlled the weights, and the people with life sentences controlled the weight. So you couldn't just walk up and pick up the weights and start working out. So I'm going out there. I'm doing calisthenics, push-ups, pull-ups, dips, squats, lunges. However, when you come off the bus, people that have been working out 5 or 10 years, they already like, man, he ain't taking it serious. He's just trying to do it to do past his time, his short time. So they don't allow just anybody to get in their workout crew. And it was all gang members. So I'm like, man, I don't want to be forced to get down, you know what I mean? I'm 24, 25. And I wanted to come out the same way, but I want to be changed mentally, but I didn't want to commit to no gang, right? So there was this guy, he had same age as me. His name was Rashad. He was 25, about to go home, though. He'd already done 5 years. So he's just giving me some wisdom, like how to do my time. And he said, I heard you were a club promoter. I want to be a club promoter. I got my homies that's on the outs in Kentucky. They're doing club promoting. They just started. Can you give me some advice? I told him, look, I'll give you some advice. You let me work out with you guys. He's like, all right, I'm going to holler at the shot caller. And you don't have to show all of them your paperwork. Just show me. I'm going to vouch for you. And then you can start working out. I'm like, okay, cool. When we do that, then I'll give you the game with the club promoter. So he does that. Get me to working out. I don't know the guy that's always quiet that's leading the car. He got 2 life sentences plus 10. He been down for 14 years. And he was friends with Steve Harvey's wife, ex-husband. I was in the feds with him in Memphis. So he's like telling me if I quit one time, I got to commit to 5 days a week for an hour. If I quit one time, I can't come back. So he like basically planted a seed. His name was Kenny G. He planted a seed that I watered every day. Like for that whole 10 months I worked out with him. And he found out that I was leaving, transferring for good behavior. And he figured out, when he found that out, he was like, look, youngster, this is the first time he ever like had a conversation with me outside of working out. The only time he just telling me how many reps and on top of me. He never talked to me when we weren't working out. So he's like, youngster, let me talk to you real quick. He's like, I've been in here 14 years. You know how many guys like you, because he knew my case, he knew my charges, drug dealers like you to come in here, meet new connections, and think they can outsmart the feds. That I seen go home, didn't have a legitimate plan, and they come back with a bigger sentence. So he was like, look, put you together a plan and execute when you get out. I don't care how hard it gets. You much rather be working at McDonald's on the streets and working on your plan at the same time than have a life sentence in here. That stuck with me. So I knew I had to put together a plan. I was transferred. I got to Miami. And when I got there, I went on the yard. I said, look, I want to work out with the toughest workout crew. And there was a guy named Wild Bill. So my homie from Tallahassee was like, man, you don't want to work out with Wild Bill. He sent people to medical. So I'm like, man, that's what I want. Let me work out with him. So I started working out with him. I was the weakest link. And it was like 6 of us. But in like 10 months, I was the second strongest. And Wild Bill was about to get transferred. He had a life sentence, but he fought it. And he ended up getting it overturned and did 20 years. I developed after training with Wild Bill, I developed like a level of discipline and determination, self-confidence to where I knew I can do anything. I changed my mind in here, you know what I mean? I changed my mindset. I know I can get out and make fitness my lifestyle and a brand and be an entrepreneur with my brand. So I met this guy named Ross Mandel, and I'm in there. So I'm from North Florida, and it's divided in the prison. I'm in Florida, but it's divided. South Florida, Central Florida, and North Florida. So I'm sitting down every day at a table before I work out. I'm sitting down with Ross Mandel, Wall Street guy. He was the first person to take a American company public on the London Stock Exchange, right? And he's featured in Forbes. So now all these black guys, I'm getting backlash from them because I'm gravitating to him. You know what I mean? So now it's like I had to step up and tell them, look, man, I'm trying to better myself. What you guys talking about is not going to help me when I get out of here. I need information that can help me succeed in life legit. Not talking about the lifestyle that already got me in here. I got to leave that person behind in here, right? So now they see that I'm actually like learning stuff from this guy. And he's actually willing to give me this information. And he mentored me. Like I said in the beginning, I didn't have a father figure in the streets, a positive role model. He mentored me and taught me things that I never learned growing up. And it like hit a refresh button in my brain. It like unlocked something to where I can be a legit law-abiding citizen. I don't have to live this stereotype like when I get out of prison, you're gonna go back to the same ways. You know what I mean? The odds was already stacked against me. So I had this chip on my shoulder to prove people wrong, because I said I was gonna stop so many times, did the same thing, right? Where I'm from, everybody knows, that's what they know me as, a drug dealer. And I started putting together my plan. I became a certified personal trainer. I started reading books. I was so passionate about fitness. I met so many high caliber guys. I mean, they had like hundreds of millions, and they had fraud cases. All of them gave me the same advice. Whatever it is you do, you got to be passionate about it. If you're not passionate about it, you're going to quit. And I'm like, man, why all of them saying the same thing? So I knew fitness was my exit route to get away, get out of the streets. And when I got out, I was supposed to relocate to Panama City, Florida, right? Jasmine, she was there the whole entire time while I was in prison for 6 years. And when I got out, 2 weeks before I got out, my whole plan, like, it was discouraging. They told me I had to live in Texas on parole. I was denied to go back to Florida, and that's why I lived my entire life. I didn't know anybody in Texas. So I had a high-profile case in Texas. I was on the front of the newspaper in Texas, right? I knew it was going to be hard to get a job in Texas. So I got out. They put me in the halfway house. I didn't like the halfway house. I'm riding a bike to all the gyms in Southeast Texas. Everybody told me no. I had all the credentials. I had certified personal trainer, nutrition specialist, resistant training, everything. I had all the certifications. When nobody called me back, I got so discouraged. I was ready to give up and make that phone call to go back to my old ways. And something told me, like, keep pushing. Like, that perseverance to endure, like, from working out, that made me go the extra mile. And I read a book. It was the 5 agreements. And always try your best. That's one of them. So I told myself, I'm not trying my best. If I quit right now, I'm not trying my best. And I went back to the halfway house, and I went to my plan B. I was a pescatarian. In the halfway house, I was buying fish from the stores, and I was bringing back to the halfway house. They were taking my fish from me. You couldn't have food. So they were forcing me to kind of break my discipline. I was getting so frustrated. So I started eating poultry again, chicken and turkey, because they kept taking my fish. Every time I bought it, they was taking it. And I became a server at Golden Corral. I saved all my money at Golden Corral as a server. And I told Babe, I said, Jasmine, I'm tired of working at Golden Corral. This isn't my calling. I'm a certified personal trainer. And I was like, won't nobody give me an opportunity? So she was like, babe, just quit and just start working out in the gym. So I'm like, that's a good idea. So I said, I'm going to get a membership at the gym that I want to work at. I like manifested in my mind. And I got a membership at Exogen Health and Fitness Club. So I'm working out there. I didn't have a debit card. I put in Jasmine's name. And she came. I'm waiting for her lease to be over with so she can move to Texas with me. So she came to visit. We go in the gym. I'm training her, right? And I see a guy in a suit. He's watching me behind the Stairmaster. She's telling me I'm paranoid because, I just did 6 years in prison. So I'm seeing everything. My awareness level is high. And she said, babe, you tripping. So we just created Streetz2Fitness. So I was like, when we was trying to think of the domain, the name to go buy on GoDaddy, I said Fitness Street, and I'm trying to figure it out. Jasmine said Streetz2Fitness. So we went on the domain, and we put a Streets with an S. It wasn't available. We ended up putting it with a Z to Fitness. We had just created the corporate. No, we did DBA, didn't we? What did we do? The LLC. Yeah, we made an LLC, and we just got the domain, right? And we were about to do the first post. I just finished training and recording. I sit down at the coffee table just like this. We're drinking coffee in the lobby of the fitness club. A guy came and called my name. But before he called my name, Jasmine told me, go take my debit card off file. They keep charging me for your membership. Go put your debit card on, right? And I seen the member coordinator. I told her, look, I filled out an application like 3 weeks ago. Nobody called me back. She said, fill out an application right now. I'll put it in the right person's hands. So I filled out the application. And that was the guy that was watching us behind the Stairmaster. So we're about to do the post on Instagram. And the guy says, hey, Kipp, can you come talk to me real quick in my office? And he said, look, you know you're breaking my rules, right? You're training in my gym. You're not a trainer for my gym. I was like, sir, that's my fiance. I didn't know that I was breaking your rules. It'll never happen again. I didn't mean any disrespect. I was very humble. And he said, I heard you're a certified trainer. Can you show me your license certificate? I said, yeah, I can show you. He was like, look, I'm looking for a personal trainer, but not at this location. If you're willing to work at the Mid-County location, remind you, I'm not from Texas. I don't know where Mid-County is. I just agreed, right? I agreed, and I said, babe, see how far away that is? Remind you, I'm riding a bike. So it's like 50-minute bike ride on the highway. I'm like, man, I done committed to this job, and I live far away. I'm living in the hood in Beaumont and South Park. And I'm like, how I'm gonna do this? You're leaving with, she was about to leave back and go back to Florida with the car. I started catching Uber, right? I didn't have any clientele. I was getting $8 an hour just to pick up the weights. And I had to basically, it was 11,000 members there. I developed a relationship with the member coordinator. The guy hired me. And I'm walking, I'm picking up weights. I'm picking up weights like crazy and just introducing myself to people and being very friendly and getting to know people. So one guy, he gave me an opportunity to train his wife. I went from one client to 35 clients in 2.5 months. Then I got to, right before the pandemic, I got to 100 clients, right? I became the fitness director in 4 months. I was over all the trainers. And we started working on the website, streetz2fitness.com. And I needed help with my biography. So I emailed my mentor, and he helped me with my biography. He loved it so much, he sent it over to the Forbes publisher. The Forbes publisher contacted me. He said, I want to interview you and the guy that gave you an opportunity. He interviewed me, and he published my story in Forbes the following day. So now I'm there, and I want to change the dynamics of my life, because I feel like I had to stay committed to this guy. He gave me the opportunity, but I hit the ceiling there. I can only make so much money, and I'm working for his brand, but I had my own brand, you know what I mean? And we created Streetz2Fitness, but it was hard for me to work for Exogen. I broke the record. They had a record that stood for since 1993. How many sessions trained in 2 weeks was 136. I did 180. And I hit the ceiling. I had 100 clients. It was hard to manage, and it was time to go. So come to find out, right, I contact Florida, Tallahassee, Interstate Compact, and I asked, why was I denied to go back to Florida? They told me Texas never even filed the paperwork. They never even request for you to transfer. So I had to start my life over in a state that I'm not familiar with. I didn't know anybody, and I stayed there 2 years. And after the Forbes article, right, I created a foundation, Streetz2Fitness Foundation for Juvenile Justice Reform, to help bridge that gap. You know, they could have changed the path of my life if they provided me the right resources when I was incarcerated at a teenager. I turned 18 in there, and I feel like these kids in these poverty neighborhoods, they don't have any fathers. They don't have a mentor to help guide them and show them the right way. They go to the detention center and they train them to become institutionalized at a young age. And I feel as if with the right people and the right people that have the influence to help these kids to bridge the gap, it can change the whole trajectory for like low income, underserved neighborhoods. You know what I mean? And that's the life, and that's the neighborhood that I grew up in. So we end up relocating to Florida, and I've raised capital, $265,000 for my company. All the things that I learned from my mentor in prison. I met successful people while in Texas. I was training their kids and training them as well. You know, they have the oil refineries in Texas, so I met a lot of wealthy people, and they love me. They love my story, and I'm to the point to where now I'm ready to go to the next level. You know what I mean?
Want to check the time?
Yeah, what time is it?
I think it's 3 in the second.
No, it's 3:15.
We done missed it. I ain't gonna get up.